When you think about a massive corporation buying parts for a product, you probably picture something pretty clinical.
Right, like a giant spreadsheet or something.
Exactly. You imagine it's essentially just like you clicking add to cart on a website, but, maybe with a few extra zeros on the price tag. You find the lowest price, you click buy, the parts show up. Welcome to today's deep dive, by the way. I'm your host.
And I'm your resident supply chain expert for today.
And our mission for this deep dive, using the APICS CSCP learning system text, is to really explore this invisible, incredibly high-stakes world of supplier and supply chain relationships.
Because, spoiler alert, it is not just clicking add to cart.
No, not at all. We're going to decode how modern businesses don't just buy parts. They actually build these massive, interconnected global alliances. And it requires intense strategic planning and, honestly, cultural navigation just to get you the products you rely on every single day.
It's a huge undertaking. Approaching corporate purchasing like an online shopping cart is basically a fast track to bankrupting a company.
Right, because when you actually look at a modern global supply network, it is nothing like a simple transaction. It is much closer to, negotiating a high-stakes cross-cultural marriage.
That is a very accurate way to put it, yeah.
Okay, let's unpack this. To understand how these global networks function, we basically have to unlearn everything we think we know about corporate purchasing, right?
We do. The first thing we have to separate are two fundamentally different approaches. So we've got tactical buying and then strategic sourcing.
Okay, tactical versus strategic.
Right. Tactical buying is exactly that add to cart mentality you mentioned. It is highly transactional. It's often pretty adversarial, actually.
Like fighting over pennies.
Exactly. The entire focus is on finding the lowest landed cost.
Landed cost meaning the price of the item itself plus the cost of shipping and customs, right?
Yes, exactly. You squeeze the vendor, you get the parts, and you walk away.
But relying solely on tactical buying is a trap, isn't it? I mean, landed cost is only a tiny fraction of the bigger picture.
A very tiny fraction. Because if you buy a remarkably cheap component, and it fails in the field,
right,
those upfront savings are instantly wiped out by the cost of returns, warranty claims, and, losing a customer for life.
The hidden costs will always find you.
Always. And that is why successful supply chains shift their critical operations to strategic sourcing. Strategic sourcing doesn't look at landed cost. It focuses on the total cost of ownership.
Total cost of ownership. So that includes the cost to inspect the item, maintain it.
Yeah, train people to use it, and eventually even dispose of it. Instead of treating suppliers as vendors to be squeezed for a discount, you start treating them as collaborative partners who actually add value to your final product. And the overarching methodology that drives this whole thing is called Supplier Relationship Management, or SRM.
SRM. Okay, let me make sure I'm wrapping my head around this shift.
Okay.
So tactical buying is like me grabbing a coffee at a drive-thru on a road trip. I want it cheap, I want it fast, and frankly, I don't care about the barista's dreams or, where the coffee beans came from.
You just want the caffeine.
Right. I just want caffeine. But strategic sourcing is like entering a joint venture to co-own the coffee farm. Like I'm investing in the soil, the farmers, and the long-term yield of the crop.
That analogy hits the nail on the head. You are deeply integrating your workflow with theirs to ensure the long-term survival of both businesses.
Okay, but realistically, a company can't co-own the farm for every single paperclip, rubber band, and break room napkin they use.
Oh no, that would be a nightmare.
Right? Trying to build a deep, collaborative marriage with the company that supplies your staples would completely paralyze your operation.
And that constraint is actually the entire basis for supplier segmentation. In SRM, you do not treat all suppliers equally.
So you play favorites?
Sort of, yeah. Supply chain professionals apply the Pareto rule. Roughly 20% of your suppliers are going to deliver 80% of the value to your bottom line. Those are what we call your vital few.
So you only invest the heavy resources like the deep SRM relationship building into those critical differentiating components.
Right. If a supplier provides the proprietary engine valve that makes your product 10 times better than the competition, they get the strategic alliance.
You integrate your software with theirs, you share long-term forecasts, that kind of thing.
Exactly. But the suppliers providing the paper clips and the janitorial supplies, they are the trivial many. You keep them at arm's length.
So that's where you use the tactical buying.
Yes, tactical buying, automated purchasing systems, and just standardized contracts.
Yeah.
You segment your suppliers based on their capabilities, their impact on your customer service, and, their level of innovation.
Okay, so Assuming we've segmented our suppliers and identified our vital few, the ones we desperately need a strategic relationship with, how do companies actually build these alliances without them falling apart?
It takes a lot of work.
I mean, regular marriages are hard enough, let alone corporate ones spanning thousands of miles.
Yeah, building an alliance requires a rigorous, structured framework. A lot of organizations use a specific 10-step process from the APICS text to architect these partnerships.
10 steps. Okay, walk us through it.
Well, the most critical phase actually happens before you even pick up the phone to call a potential partner. Step 1 is aligning internally.
Aligning internally,
Yeah.
which makes perfect sense when you map it to personal life. It's like making sure your whole family agrees on the ground rules before adopting a dog.
Right.
If dad says the dog sleeps in the bed and mom says the dog stays in the garage, you don't have a dog problem, you have an internal alignment problem. Chaos ensues.
And in a corporate setting, that chaos is incredibly expensive. Imagine the procurement department is solely focused on getting the lowest price, but the engineering department requires top-tier, highly innovative materials.
Oh, wow, yeah.
If those internal stakeholders aren't aligned on the goals beforehand, the supplier just gets mixed messages and the partnership crumbles before it even starts.
Okay, so step 1 is internal alignment. What's next?
Then you have step 2, selecting proper partners. Step 3 is negotiating win-win deals. 4 is establishing ground rules. 5 is appointing a dedicated alliance manager.
So when to babysit the marriage.
Basically, yes. Then 6 is encouraging collaboration. 7 is engaging in a collaborative corporate mindset. 8 is managing multifaceted relationships.
That's a lot of managing.
It is. Step 9 is conducting pulse checks. And finally, 10 is planning for change.
Okay, step 9, the pulse checks, really stands out to me because I feel like a major reason these corporate alliances fail is that companies treat them as a one-time merger event.
Yes, exactly. They pop the champagne, sign the contract, and just assume the machinery will run itself.
But an alliance is a living, breathing entity.
It requires formal, scheduled audits. And not just to check the financial metrics, but to audit the health and trust of the relationship itself. Like, are we communicating well? Are our engineers actually still collaborating effectively?
The source material has a really fascinating real-world example of how to institutionalize this kind of mutual trust. It involves a recreational boat manufacturer and an engine designer.
Oh, yeah, that's a great example.
They recognized they needed an intimate, ongoing relationship because they were essentially co-designing the final product. So to negotiate a true win-win deal, step 3, right? The boat manufacturer didn't just pay top dollar for the engines.
They took it a step further.
Right. They actually placed the engine designer's nameplate right on the hull of the boats.
Which fundamentally changes the dynamic. I mean, it's essentially free advertising for the engine designer.
Yeah.
It strengthens their brand and helps them attract new business in other markets.
It proves the boat manufacturer is truly invested in the supplier's long-term success, not just squeezing them for a transaction.
And the mechanics of that trust pay massive dividends down the line. When a supplier knows you are looking out for their bottom line, they prioritize your orders during a supply chain shortage.
They bring their best innovations to you first before offering them to your competitors.
Exactly.
So we've aligned internally, we've negotiated a win-win deal, maybe we've even put their nameplate on our product. We have this beautiful, trusting alliance.
That's perfect.
But how do you actually verify that the supplier is maintaining quality and ethics? In a global supply chain, trust is great, but I need physical proof that the components aren't going to explode.
Right. Trust but verify. This is where supplier certification comes into play.
Okay.
Certification is the mechanism you use to verify that a supplier operates, maintains, and documents highly effective procedures. You're moving from just assuming quality to actually proving it through rigorous measurement.
And typically this involves third-party standards,
Yeah,
right?
yes, exactly.
And the gold standard for quality management is ISO, the International Organization for Standardization. But certification goes beyond just the physical quality of the parts. The text mentions critical standards like SA 8000, which handles social accountability.
Yeah, the ethical side of the supply chain.
Right, because SA 8000 sets strict auditable rules against child labor, forced labor, and discrimination. It mandates safe working conditions, fair compensation, the right to collective bargaining, all of that.
It's comprehensive.
So when a company ensures its suppliers are SA 8000 certified, They are actively protecting their brand from massive ethical scandals while ensuring a humane supply chain.
The brand protection is vital, absolutely. But certification also completely overhauls the operational side of the business.
I'm glad you put up the operations, actually, because looking at the joint quality planning, the documentation, the constant audits required for certification, I have to wonder, isn't this a massive bureaucratic headache? Do suppliers actually want to go through all of this?
It is incredibly labor-intensive up front, I won't lie, but the operational genius behind it is that certification is deeply mutually beneficial.
How so?
Well, for the supplier, earning that certification is a massive marketing boost. Many large multinational corporations simply refuse to do business with uncertified suppliers. It's literally a key that unlocks access to wider, more lucrative markets.
Okay, so the supplier wins more contracts. That makes sense. But what is the operational win for the buying company that justifies all the headache of setting this up?
The buying company gets to buy velocity.
Buy velocity.
Yes. When a supplier is fully certified, when their processes are verified to be rock solid and statistically capable, the buying company can entirely skip incoming shipment inspections.
Wait, really? They just let the trucks roll right in without checking the parts?
Yes. If you think about the mechanics of the traditional model, it's a massive bottleneck. A truck arrives at the loading dock, you pay a team to unload it.
Yeah.
You pay inspectors to open random boxes, pull out statistical samples, take them to a lab, test them, and log the results.
And meanwhile, the rest of the shipment is just sitting there.
Exactly. It sits in a quarantine holding area, taking up expensive warehouse space. It takes days, costs a fortune in labor, and holds up the assembly line.
But with a certified supplier, you already know the parts were made perfectly before they even went on the truck.
The parts go straight from the receiving dock directly to the assembly line. The reduction in receiving costs, warehousing overhead, and overall cycle time is just monumental.
Yeah.
You aren't just buying a physical component, you're buying the speed and fluidity of your entire operation.
Buying velocity. That is such a powerful concept. So we have the strategic alliance, we have the rigorous certification process ensuring quality and ethics, and the parts are flowing fast.
Everything's moving.
But because these supply chains stretch across the entire globe, the whole system ultimately relies on human communication. And human communication is, well, incredibly fragile.
It is arguably the weakest link in the entire global network. If you look at the fundamental architecture of communication, you have a sender, a message, a medium, and a receiver.
Right, the basics.
But the critical components that make or break global supply chains are the filters and the feedback.
Filters being things like our emotional state, our past experiences, and crucially, our cultural background. Every single message passes through a filter before it's decoded by the receiver.
And if you don't understand the cultural filter of your supply chain partner, your communication will fail no matter how good your technology is.
And culture isn't just an individual's quirky personality, right? It is a learned, shared system of values and attitudes.
Exactly. Supply chain professionals rely heavily on Geert Hofstede's cultural dimensions to navigate this. It's astounding how a multi-million-dollar logistics chain, perfectly optimized on a spreadsheet, can completely stall out just because a manager fails to understand these dimensions.
It's fascinating. Take an American manager who decides to just, speak their mind. In the U.S., the get-down-to-business mentality is highly valued.
Very much so.
We see blunt honesty and getting straight to the point as a sign of efficiency and respect for people's time.
But if you take that blunt efficiency into a different cultural context, the results can be disastrous. Hofstede's model looks at individualism versus collectivism.
Okay.
The U.S. is highly individualist. People tend to define themselves by their specific jobs and personal achievements. But in collectivist cultures, like many in Latin America or Asia, relationships and group harmony are far more important than the immediate task.
Meaning, if you skip the relationship building and just start barking orders over email, you've completely alienated your partner.
100%.
In China, for example, the text talks about a concept called guangxi, which refers to the essential network of informal, close relationships and mutual obligations. You don't just sign a contract and start demanding parts. You've got to build guangxi first. Respect, patience, and formality are mandatory.
Japan has a similar dynamic with wringing the process of building consensus from the ground up. An American manager might expect a quick, top-down decision from a Japanese executive. But the executive can't just force a top-down mandate. The entire group has to align and agree first. Pushing for immediate action just causes friction.
The cultural dimension that really highlights the friction in global supply chains is power distance. It measures the extent to which less powerful members of an organization accept an unequal distribution of power.
That's a huge one.
Boy.
In high-power distance cultures like Malaysia or Mexico, a strict hierarchy is expected. Managers are expected to tell employees exactly what to do, and employees expect to be directed.
But in low-power distance cultures like Austria, Israel, or the US, the hierarchy is much flatter. Employees expect their managers to consult with them and value their input.
So imagine the mechanics of an American manager trying to implement an agile, collaborative workflow with a supplier in a high-power distance country.
Oh boy.
The American expects the supplier's floor workers to speak up, offer ideas, pull the proverbial and-on cord to stop production if there's a defect, and push back if a schedule is unrealistic.
And I'm guessing the workers won't do any of that.
They won't do any of that because culturally, speaking up to authority is deeply inappropriate. They are waiting for the boss to dictate the terms.
So the American manager misinterprets this as a lack of initiative. The supplier feels disrespected by the lack of clear direction, and the strategic alliance begins to fracture.
Exactly. And we also have to factor in the concept of saving face, finding a way to retain your good image or pride even when you're wrong. In many Asian and Latin cultures, pointing out a supplier's mistake bluntly in front of their team destroys their face. It causes deep embarrassment.
The damage from that can be irreparable, can't it?
It really can. You might win the argument over a delayed shipment, but you lose the strategic alliance you spent years building.
Wow.
You have to be obsessive about the feedback loop. In global sourcing, you have to constantly ask questions, clarify understanding, and adapt your communication style to the specific stakeholder's cultural filter. You have to ensure the message perceived actually matches the message intended.
Okay, let's unpack this. So what does this all mean? We started by talking about unlearning how we view corporate purchasing.
Right, getting rid of the add-to-cart mindset.
Yeah. We moved from tactical, penny-pinching transactions to strategic sourcing based on the total cost of ownership. We explored the mechanics of building vital alliances, verifying them with intense certifications so we can buy velocity.
High velocity, yeah.
And then desperately trying to keep those alliances alive by navigating the incredibly complex human filters of global culture.
Ultimately, it means that a modern supply chain is a deeply interdependent ecosystem. A company cannot survive by simply pushing boxes out the factory door.
No.
They have to tightly integrate their customer relationship management with their supplier relationship management. The voice of the end consumer has to flow seamlessly all the way back to the raw material supplier, crossing borders, time zones, and cultures without losing its meaning.
It really reframes the world around you. Next time you look at your smartphone or, any complex product, consider this. We are entering an era where AI and complex algorithms are attempting to automate these massive global supply chains to peak efficiency. But will an algorithm ever be able to truly understand the delicate nuance of saving face in a boardroom?
That's the real question.
Will a piece of software ever successfully build guangxi with a critical supplier? Or will the deep, fragile complexity of human culture remain the one thing in the supply chain that technology simply cannot optimize? Something to mull over. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive, and we'll catch you next time.